What's up, YouTube? Typically, I would answer this question on Patreon because this question came from a patron, Steve and Jennifer, regarding pricing, but I'm going to use it as CEO Bear 0016 pricing to illustrate a point. So, the question and then the answer. CEO Bear question, gearing up or trying to for a business that Yah, God, Yahweh your Elohim, the Lord your God, Adonai El Shaddai Hashem, the creator of the universe, wants me to do, as I have had many confirmations and I'm slowly selling the product. First full stop. Gearing up or trying to. And pick one. You are doing business or you aren't doing business. There is no in between. You must commit. You have to commit. And once you commit, you're in it. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. So, gentle rebuke, and this is what a gentle rebuke for me looks like. Stop playing. If you're going to play, then you have a hobby, not a business. You need to not be playing if you have a business, because as you scale the business, which is the natural progression of a business as it grows, you're going to need the revenue that a business produces in order to be able to pay yourself and pay other people to do the job that you were doing when you started the business in the first place. So if you're just playing, if it's just a hobby and it makes you some beer money on the side, that's fine. But I don't answer those kinds of questions. You want business questions answered. This is a business answer. And so commit. You must commit. And once you do, once you lock onto a course of action, it's very easy to decision make. Does this thing assist me, or does it pull me away from whatever my goal is? And if it helps, then you can do a Pareto principle cost-benefit analysis. Should I or shouldn't I do this thing? Cost-benefit analysis. If it doesn't help you accomplish the goal, get rid of it, homie. All right, so next. Not sure if my price point is lowballing myself or too high, which is why we're talking about pricing today. When you have the price point of what each item individually costs, how do you determine the price point for regular products? And what would that look like if you wanted to sell wholesale? So you have questions about pricing, and it sounds like you don't quite understand some of the terminology around pricing. So I'm going to help you with that. For my product, with just materials to make, cost me $10.36. The only thing I haven't done is count the time it takes to make the cups, because there's a lot of waiting in between for product to dry with paint and the epoxy. So it sounds like you're making cups, tumblers, maybe something like this, like a Bear tumbler, bearindependent.com. Look at that guy shilling again. I know, I hate it when he plugs one product in a free video. It's terrible. How dare he? So, and I'm drinking Moose Run coffee. So go get coffee from them. Who cares? This guy on the internet. Whatever. So you don't understand what your inputs are. All right. And so there's a minimum of 3 inputs that you're going to have. Right now, you have what are called COGS, cost of goods. Your COGS are $10.36. The cup, the paint, the whatever else you might have. And I did not plan this. I just happen to be drinking coffee at this moment. All right? So your COGS are the cup, the paint, the whatever. That's not the entirety of the price. The biggest thing that you're missing is labor. And you have to quantify at a minimum how much time each cup takes to make. And hopefully you're not making them one at a time. You should be batching them, a dozen, 50, 100 of each cup at a time, because you achieve what's called an economy of scale when you batch. It is easier, it takes less time. Let's say it takes you 10 minutes per cup when you do one. Well, when you do 100, it's not going to take you 1,000 minutes, 10 minutes per cup. It may take you 500 minutes to do 100 cups. So that's economy of scale. You just cut the amount of labor required to produce that product in half. Another thing that we look at for economy of scale is if I go to the distributor, the person who manufactures the cups, and I buy this raw product, not printed, maybe this cup, when I buy a dozen of them, is $8 a piece. What happens when I buy 100 of them? Are they now $4 a piece? That's called economy of scale. And so the higher quantity you purchase of an item, the lower the cost per unit is. And so if you're not buying cups 100 at a time, what I would do is I would save my money until I can buy 100 of these cups and pay half as much per unit than if I buy them individually or a dozen at a time. And if you're making 19 different types of cup, I would stop. I would pick the one, this one style, not this style also. And here, let me have your coffee cup, babe. And also this style. Also, shout out to Browsy Acres, Rhonda and Travis. Great Wagyu beef. It's just shilling super hard. They're delicious. I eat their bone and ribeyes all the time. Thank you. So not this cup and not this cup. Pick one, and you scale with one until you produce enough revenue from one because you have an economy of scale with one to then bring on the second product line and start producing the second product line and scale that up with economy of scale as well. If you're doing multiple different things at the same time, that's going to be more complex, which is going to cost more. It's going to be more revenue intensive in order to achieve economy of scale on each one of the products. When we started, we made this, the Bear Fact. That's it. This is all we made was the Bear Fact. To this day, the number one seller in our store is the Bear Fact. Right? We sell lots of other kits. We sold 14,476 kits in 2023. 8,000 of them were Bear Facts. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So there you go. Right? So you use the revenue that your main flagship product produces to then branch out into other products later. But you don't start with a dozen different offerings. You start with the one. And the reason you start with the one is so that you can achieve an economy of scale on the one, so that your dollar goes further when you're purchasing. I would rather, for my input cost, my COGS, I would rather pay half as much for the raw materials if I can, right? And the way you do that is you buy in volume. And maybe your distributor doesn't have volume pricing listed. Well, then you do a business thing called calling them, and you say, hey, it's Bear with fancycups.com, and I noticed you've got this 18-ounce stainless steel tumbler. It's listed on your wholesale website for $8, and they come in units of a dozen. I'd like to buy 20 dozen. Can I give you $6 a piece for them? You might start even lower than that. I'll give you $3.79 a piece for them. And they'll either say, yes, sir, sounds good. They'll say, no, sir, we don't do that. Or they say, well, you know what? I'll have to talk to my boss. And then the boss comes back and goes, dude, I can't do $3.79. I can do $5.50 though. Okay, well, $5.50 is still significantly lower than $8 per unit. Hashtag businessing. Okay, so COGS, cost of goods, is the price, the one component of pricing that you currently have down. You currently understand that you're paying $10.36 per unit COGS, cost of goods. You don't have anything figured out for labor. Sorry, my wife is building a cottage over there or something. I don't know what she's doing. You have to quantify the labor. How much time is it taking you to do this? Because at some point, you're going to have to pay somebody else to do this. And you need to know what a reasonable amount of output for that employee is going to be. I can do 10 cups an hour, hypothetically. That's what I can do, is 10 cups an hour. And if I pay somebody $20 an hour, that means the labor per cup is $2 per cup, hypothetically. Right? You need that data. Pricing equals data. Simple as that. No data, no pricing. Bad data, bad pricing. So, you need to know how much time is it taking you to do this, and keep detailed records, and also understand if, when you hire somebody to do the job that you're currently doing, they're probably not going to do it as well as you do it. especially when you first hire them because you haven't trained them. And then even then after that, their A plus performance might be your B minus performance. Maybe they only get 8 cups per hour instead of 10. Well, that makes your labor per cup now $2.50 per cup instead of $2. All right, so let's just say we're at 1036 cogs, and we're going to put in $2.50 labor. All right, per cup. Now, OPEX. What is OPEX? Operational expenses. Right now, you're probably operating out of your house, your home, your barn, your garage, or whatever, and that's a great place to start. I started Refuge Medical in my barn. Why? Because it already existed. I didn't have to rent a place or build a place. I didn't need a separate electrical hookup and water and separate bathrooms, and it's just there. So low barrier to entry. But at some point, you're going to have things like rent, utilities, taxes, marketing costs, fuel for your vehicle, for deliveries, maintenance, etc., etc., etc. All these are OPEX, or operational expenses. As you grow, part of OPEX could be what's called S&A, salary and administrative costs, for your attorney, for your CPA, for your bookkeeper, for your chief marketing officer, etc., etc. All right, that's all OPEX. So you need to know what OPEX is. Right now, you have probably very low OPEX because you're operating out of your house. But you're probably paying utilities at your house using, pooping in the bathroom and flipping light switches and using the oven to bake the epoxy on the cup or whatever. So we'll just use a plug number and you need to know what your OPEX is. You need to know for your pricing. We'll use a plug number of $2 per cup OPEX. So that brings us to $14.86 per cup. Well, dude, that's a 45% increase in what you are currently considering your cost, which is just COGS. And so there's cost, there's price, and there's value. Shifting gears now. Cost is what it costs you to produce the product. Right now, we're going to call it $15 between COGS, cost of goods, labor, and operational expenses, OPEX. $15. That's your cost. Now, if you wanted to, and now the next thing you got to figure out is, what is your price? The price is what you charge people. The last variable here is value. And value is determined by the end user, by the customer. If you charge $80 for this tumbler, I have to feel like, at a minimum, this is worth at least $80. I would rather have this than $80. This is sales in a nutshell, okay? $80, I don't know this, I'm not in the tumbler game, but $80 is probably way too high for what is essentially a commoditized product that has a high amount of competition. It's not hard to get these. That's something to think about, and that's going to, the marketplace is going to drive what an acceptable price is. The value is set by me, the end user. How could I make this more valuable? That's called a market differentiator. Well, this is just your standard stainless steel tumbler, but it has my logo on it. So people in the Bear Nation will buy this because it has my logo on it, because they're emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially, educationally bought into the Bear Nation and what we stand for here. That's a market differentiator. So you can take a logo, preferably a well-known logo, and put it on a thing and sell that thing for more than the thing by itself, right? $10 in COGS, we sell this at our website for $25. There you go. Actual cost is probably about $15, right? So we have a $25 tumbler, which is something that you should know. So you need to do what's called market research. What is everybody else selling their tumblers for? What's the high side, what's the low side, and what's the average? Mean cost. Value is determined by the person on the other end of the transaction. This first aid kit is $269. It is one of, if not the most expensive first aid kits of this size on planet Earth. I don't care, because I just told you we sold 14,476 kits in 2023. Because the value that this kit brings is more than the price. The price is $269. The value is somebody you love isn't dead, because this kit is made professionally by professionals to address the entirety of the March algorithm. Massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, everything else. And 117 people, see market differentiators, 117 people are still alive because of this kit, so I know it works. And it's made in the United States of America, not China, market differentiator. You see my point here? So when the customer decides, I would rather have the product than what it costs to buy the product, that's value. The price is $269. The value is somebody I love didn't die because I had the tools I needed to save their life. See the difference between price and value? Now, what's the cost on this? Well, I'm not going to tell you what it cost me to make this, but I do operate Refuge Medical at a low profit margin. Why? Because I want to keep that kit, which is the best on planet Earth, as accessible as possible, while still being able to pay my COGS, my labor, and my OPEX, and have 5% left over at the end of the day. So don't confuse cost. Cost is what it costs you to produce it. In your case, $14.86 or about $15. Price is what we sell the product for. Gesundheit, baby. And value is set by the consumer. And if value exceeds price, then you will have sales. If price exceeds value, then you won't have sales. Okay? So, your cost is $15. Now you do market research and you realize that people are selling tumblers anywhere between $15 and $30 on average. Okay. Where do you want to be in the market space? Probably near the top. Because if the low point is $15 a tumbler and yours costs $14.86 and you decide to sell your tumbler at $16, you're making $1.14 per tumbler, which if you pushed 100 out every day, you'd have $1.16, you'd have $116 every day before taxes. And then when the government takes 30 to 50% of that, you got $60 left over for a day's work. Congratulations, entrepreneurship. Trading working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week for somebody else to working 144 hours a week for yourself. So, but Bear, there's 168 hours in a week. Yeah, 6 days ye shall labor. The seventh is a Sabbath of rest unto Yahweh your Elohim. Exodus 20, read it. So, I would, if I was you, I'd look at the market and say, you know what? $25 is an acceptable price for a tumbler. Market research, I can probably generate sales at $25. I have a cost of $15. That leaves $10 of headroom per cup at this point. And if I sell 12 cups in a day instead of 100, I've made more money at that margin than at a low margin of $16 per cup. Okay? And pricing and margins are something that you will iterate over time because you'll think that it'll work and it doesn't work. And I have, early on in the history of Refuge, sold hundreds of kits. I remember we sold hundreds of kits in a month. Praise Yah, had a great month in sales, and we made $50. The company made $50 because our pricing was wrong. So how do you know you got it right? You operate and you figure it out and you make adjustments on the fly as needed. Now, lastly, you're asking about wholesale. can you provide cups at wholesale? And if so, what would that look like? Well, now, when you're wholesaling, you go from having DTC, direct to consumer, multiple small orders of 1 or 2 cups to B2B, business to business, where your business is providing product to another business, where you have one customer that wants hundreds, if not thousands of units. The first thing you got to ask yourself is, what's a minimum order look like? What's the minimum juice versus squeeze in order for me to sell at a lower price point to this person? Maybe it's 50 units, 100 units, maybe it's 1,000 units. You got to figure that out. What's the benefit of doing wholesale? You achieve that economy of scale. If you have 1,000 cups to make for Bear Independent, you get to get into a rhythm, and maybe your standard output is 100 cups a day, which hypothetically this should take you 10 days to do or 2 working weeks to do. But because there's repetition in it, it's the same logo, the same paint, the same cup, the same dry time. And instead of packaging individual cups, I'm packaging 200 cups per box. And so therefore, I got it done in a week instead of 2 weeks. Economy of scale. So it took me half the amount of time, and I charged 80%. I gave them a 20% discount on wholesale. I charged 80% of what I normally would. I'm actually ahead. Right? That's the benefit of wholesale. But you can't wholesale if you don't know what your pricing is. You can't actually have good pricing without having the data. And what you're missing is your labor costs and your OpEx costs. You know your COGS, $10.36, but you don't know your labor cost because you haven't quantified it. You don't know your OpEx cost because you haven't quantified it. You put all those together, that gets you a cost on the product. Then you set the price. The price is based upon market research, what will the market bear, and what are your differentiators, and how do you want to position yourself in the market. More expensive things you sell, typically speaking, fewer of, but there's a greater expectation of quality and prestige with the more expensive product. Now, if your product sucks, don't sell a $49 tumbler. If it's a great product, and you can, and you have great customer service and great quality and great commo, you can sell a $49 tumbler. Now, you're going to sell fewer $49 tumblers than you will $15 tumblers. But when you sell a $49 tumbler, $34 of it is profit. Gross profit, not net profit. That's a different conversation. But $34 of it is gross profit. If you're selling at $16, you got to sell 30 cups to make that same amount of gross profit. So, what's your price point going to be? What will the market bear? What are your market differentiators? Why should I buy from you? Especially in a saturated market like this, which means market differentiator for you is probably going to be your ability to customize, your customer service, your turnaround time, and your commo. If you're in a commoditized market like first aid kits, ask me how I know, your differentiators have to be quality and service based. And then remember, there's cost, price, value. Cost is what it costs you to make it. Price is what you charge for it. Value is what the market says it is. And if value exceeds price, people will buy. If price exceeds value, people won't buy. And don't even think about wholesale till you know what your pricing is. You got to do that homework first. Steve and Jennifer, I hope this is a good answer to your question. Again, typically these are the types of questions that I answer on Patreon in this format, at this length, with this level of detail. Link is always in the description to Patreon if you want to be there. Do not ask me questions here in the comments, please and thank you, because I get 1,000 to 3,000 comments a day at this point on the channel, and I probably won't see them. I do answer questions on Patreon. Yeah, that's what I got. CEO Bear 0016 pricing. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.